Las Positas as well, so welcome. Welcome. That's how popular our faculty member John Perez is.
That's right.
That's right. I think he's teaching, what are you teaching, career comm?
I'm teaching the whole major, so pick a school.
Yeah, okay. Well, he's teaching the whole major, but at Ohlone College, if you are interested in taking a class with John Perez, feel free to look at WebAdvisor. He's a pretty a Renaissance man type of thing, all right? So feel free to talk to him about that. While he is prepping to get started, I have just two things I would like to draw your attention to, and that is number one, for those of you who might have missed it, there is a sign-in sheet, and so if you're an Ohlone Community College student and you're coming here for extra credit, or if you're coming here for course credit, please remember to sign in on that sign-in sheet so that I can make sure that it is forwarded to the appropriate instructor and you can get those points, all right? So please do that. The second thing is I have an announcement for everybody, but specifically if you are a student here at Ohlone College, I wanted to let you know that the GSA club is starting to get into full swing, and so next Tuesday, December 5th, if you're interested in Building 9, basically the gymnasium apparently, there's a potluck for the GSA, which is the Gay Straight Alliance Club. So if you're interested, I just want you to know that that's taking place. Just put that on your calendars, especially if you're hungry. It's a potluck. Feel free to bring some strawberries or chips and guac.
Taking notes.
Someone bring napkins, I hope. But the flyer's up here if you want to get the information, okay? All right, without further ado, I am going to, I know we're just busting through the seams here. There's one seat up here, and then we might need to,
I had you in Ramona Silver's
we might want
class.
to pop in next door and see if I can steal some desks.
She's a good teacher.
I'll put them back, I swear.
She's my favorite.
I might do that. But anyway, John,
Yeah.
I'm going to introduce you now.
Ready.
Is that okay? Oh, you're ready? Okay, great.
Wait, no.
Okay, yeah, great. All right, and so now, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce you to our speaker today, John Perez, our Renaissance man. He is someone who is very talented, multifaceted. You should ask him about his past careers. He has a very colorful history. He is a Vegas guy, and we are also really happy to have him here in California, teaching at a multitude of community colleges here in the East Bay. So without any further ado, please welcome our very own well-loved John Perez.
Thank you so much for that.
You should be an announcer.
Well, that's her job. She does public speaking. So I want to thank everybody for coming here. Hopefully we'll have some fun today. Hopefully it won't be boring. Hopefully we'll be paying attention to me, not to her. Busted. Again, it's 2 for 2. It's only 5 minutes. All right. Thanks for coming. Take them off the extra credit list. All right, so we're going to talk about millennials. How many of you in here are a millennial? Yeah.
What do you mean by millennial?
We're going to talk about what I mean by millennial. If you don't know, it's probably not you. All right, millennials have a bad reputation. Have you heard of this?
Yes.
If you haven't heard of it, I'm going to show you a video that you may have seen.
Ding, 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 ding. There he sits inside the local coffee shop, sporting a burning facial hair. Somehow he believes, although he has no job, that by his 30s he will be a millionaire. M-I-L-L-E-N-N-I-A-L, gotta love millennials. M-I-L-L-E-N-N-I-A-L, gotta love millennials. She posts lots of selfies on her Instagram with the quote that's inspirational. Hopes to change the world while wearing yoga, hands on with her dreams and knowledge of essential oils. M-I-L-L-E-N-N-I-A-L, gotta love millennials.
Okay, so how many of you have seen that video on social media? Okay, How many of you as a millennial were offended by some of the stereotypes that were brought forward? Some of you are like, no, that's true.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And how many of you want to grab your phone right now and post on Instagram, Facebook, or social media? How many of you are currently doing that as I'm talking? Good thing you're not in my class. All right. So I want to be a millennial because millennials are cool. I love millennials so much that I spent 2 years of researching what millennials do, how they think, how they act, and what they do to each other. It's quite online, actually. So I'm going to go over what the needs are for researching millennials, how we can influence persuasiveness, whether it's marketing, messaging, or even speaking. So those are some of the goals. I'm also going to talk about who you are as a millennial, if you even are a millennial, and what are some generational differences. Are there anyone in here who's over the age of 25, 26? All right. So you're sort of at the borderline, the cusp there. So you may not be a millennial, but you could be a millennial in spirit. And most importantly, the emotional impacts and aspects of being a millennial and what that means for consumers, what it means for business owners, and those who are trying to get at your dollars and into your pockets. Those are some of the goals that we're going over today. And there'll be a question and answer period at the end of this brief presentation. So testing the theory of millennials. In grad school, I went to USC, so those who have never met me, I did my grad school studies at USC. It was very expensive. I'm still paying for it. Every time I get my bill, I look at it like, wow, was it worth it? And the answer is absolutely yes. They taught me research skills. They taught me how to properly and effectively study and understand what millennials do, are, and how you respond. All right, and then I'm also going to talk about some limitations in future research. I presented a similar talk to this about 2 years ago here at Ohlone College, and I've expanded upon it, and I've added how it applies to you and our grading systems in the community college and also at the four-year institutions. Who cares about grades? Yes. How many of you are here for extra credit alone? I am guilty. I am one of the worst people when it comes to extra credit. I just give extra credit out like it's free.
That's because I am also curious.
Thank you for sharing. I am curious in your curiosity, and we're going to talk about that. But it's the motivation factor that got you in. For some of you, you were curious. For others, you really like me and you want to come. And for others, you are terrified that I'm going to fail you. Either way, I smile because you showed up and we have a full room, standing room only. Okay? So whatever your motivation is, that's fine. As business owners, as researchers, as academics, our goal is to understand how can we motivate you to do a certain type of behavior or trait. That is the whole purpose of this. So who is in an introduction to public speaking class right now? All right, a lot of us in here. And then who is in another communications class? Okay, what's your class? I don't know you. Got hat on, glasses, Alabama.
Oh,
Good job.
interpersonal.
Interpersonal. Okay. One-on-one communication. Awesome. What class?
Listening techniques.
That's not a class, is it?
That's
Listen.
online.
Wait, we were in my class.
Yes, before.
I know you. We don't do that. We don't do that. All right. So background information about this. In 2011, I did this in preparation for a master's degree in communication, which most of you are communication majors or taking a comm class. Any non-communication people here? That's sort of a trick statement. All of you as people are communication people, right? That's what humans do, is we communicate. So it's really important to have that background and understanding. So as I said, I went to USC, and my research was limited to a handful of articles and manuscripts when I went to school. The problem was there was not enough research about millennials, so we just didn't know. What does this group of people do? What are their interests? How can we get them to do what we want them to do? Now that may sound negative or a little shady, but that's really what marketing is. How do you manipulate somebody or convince them to do something to get the response that you want? And so depending on how you use that manipulation, it has a huge impact on what your strategies are for your business. Now here's what the lure is for the millennial generation. The millennials collectively have access to about $200 billion worth of cash. That's cash money, okay? And in fact, there's a whole song called Billionaire. I want to be a billionaire so effing bad. How many of you want to be a billionaire? Okay, sure. I'm going to hand out checks, so don't get too excited. How many of you do behaviors that will help you get to that billionaire status? You do? Okay, perfect. We're going to network later so we can see how to spread that will. All right, so this spending power is huge. I'm going to show you a chart in the next couple of slides that's going to really expand upon how much money is available. And some of you are like, yes, money, I love money. But it's also going to talk about how the millennials as a group of individuals tend not to spend the money in traditional ways that other groups have historically done. And so that's what we're going to focus on. So you are a large group of Americans with fluid cash. If you want to go and do something, most of you have the resources or ability to get the resources to do it. This is exceptional because we haven't seen generations that have had this much cash available to spend in a long time. Okay. Also, the millennials are the fastest growing population of college students in the United States, which is where my interest comes in. I teach at 8 community colleges in the Bay Area, everywhere from Redwood City all the way to Vacaville down to Newark. So I want to thank all of you who came from afar, those who came from Las Positas and Livermore, thank you. Those who came locally from across the street, I appreciate that as well. All right, so let's look at some generational differences and gaps. So these are some terms you may have heard of. The lost generation, the greatest generation, silent generation, we'll just skip them. Baby boomers, Generation X, Y, and Generation Z. So these are some of the terms that you may have heard, and these are the years, the birth years that correspond with them, and then also the population, and then the spending and economic impact. So if you add that up, it's a lot of money. Generation Z, if you're born, anybody born 2001? Do we have any prodigies in here? No. Okay, I was born in 2000, so here I am, right here. Okay, 1980 to 2000, 75 million individuals, $200 billion, and the term millennial has stuck because of that 2000 year mark. All right, so there's a lot of money out here, and then if you look at this, who has the most amount of money? Potential. You do. Talk to me later.
No, what?
Oh, no, the millennials. I thought you said you did. I'm like, share. All right, $200 billion right here. And if you look at the generations following after you, it's called the new silent generation. And so what we see in research, what we look for are patterns and things that can reproduce results. All right, anybody taking a research class or statistics? Some of these terms may sound familiar. And so we have the silent generation up here. We're seeing that trend happen again, and that's 1, 2, 3, 4 different generations back. So this is exciting times for all of you. So what does that mean? $200 billion available. There's 75 million people who are in this group, plus or minus, give or take. All right, and so let's keep looking at these differences. So right now, if we go down here, there's some significant world events that have impacted how we treat our finances, how we treat our approaches to the world. Anybody around during World War I? Yeah, I didn't think so. But if you were also around during the Depression, and those are problematic. Not having funds to anything, barely having the basics such as food, water, and shelter. So that really impacts how you make decisions, how you spend the little money that you may even have. Moving forward, we have the baby boomers who were in the peak of the civil rights movement. And so in many cases, the spending patterns are very different. Now, some of the things I'm giving you are research-based generalizations, but they do not apply to every single person in that group, so keep that in mind. But it's also fair to know that when we have a civil rights movement, end of the Cold War, we have things like legalized gay marriage, and we have huge social changes such as President Trump. That is a social shift in what we've been used to. Whether you like these or not, this is what the reality of it is. So how do we work with this? How does this happen? And all of this data came from the U.S. Census, which is a government agency that collects data every 10 years. I think we're almost up on the census again. Okay, so millennial traits. After all the reading was done, after all the interviewing was done, the questions are, what are specific traits of millennials? Now, some of you may relate to these traits I present. A few of you may say, that's not me at all, and that's completely okay. For example, team players. In many cases, millennials tend to be team players, more conventional. They appreciate honesty and eye contact. And so some of us are thinking, well, millennials are always on their phones. Like right now, I can see a third of you looking down at your phone or doing something else. That's a typical millennial trait. How many of you in a class setting dislike millennials on their phones? Or just people on their phones? Let's not, okay. And then with your hands up, how many of you are those same people on their phone? You raised your hand, you didn't like it, yet you were on your phone. That is, you're so millennial. It's just so funny, right? So that's what happens. But you do appreciate the eye contact, okay? Environmentally sensitive. How many of you care about the environment? Yeah, okay, who doesn't care? You're proud about that, I can see that. You showed them that dually diesel, good job. All right, and then financially smart. So this is the one that came up for questions for me. I'm like, they're financially smart, I don't know. Maybe, we'll see. And tech savvy. That's in bold because many of you who are millennials have access to technology. One, it's affordable. Two, you were raised on it. Any of you millennials have children? You do? It's okay. I don't completely hate children. I'm just kidding, I do. So tech savvy. I have little kids, not mine, I borrowed them. But they are great because they love technology. You give them an iPhone, they can unlock that and reprogram it. So I'm like, help, 3-year-old, and she's like, here you go, uncle. Good job. But tech savvy, this is part of your culture, part of who you are. And so one of the things that I do as an instructor is I take advantage of that. We have this thing called Canvas. Who's never heard of Canvas in this room? Okay, good, no hands. What's Canvas? It's a thing to paint on, like it's also how you paint the knowledge and the research that you're doing in your different classes in your coursework. So as an instructor, I say most of my students fall into this millennial gap. I'm going to use Canvas to make it easier for all of you that take one of my classes to have access to information, communication, and most importantly, your grades. Because that is one of the best motivating factors for a student at the community college and the four-year level and even beyond is the grade factor. Instructors get it. We were once students. In fact, some of us are still students and going back and constantly learning. The grades are a huge motivating factor. One of the things that I discovered, not only as a student but as a researcher, is that the grades can turn into negative motivation. And so I took advantage of that this semester. So if any of you took me, you now are exposed to the negative grading policies. I'll talk about that in a few slides, and I'll talk about the impact that it has, especially on millennials. All right, and most importantly, the millennial group is complex. So this is not necessarily a fair trait because I would say that other generations are simple, and that is really not fair to judge somebody whether they're simple or complex. All right, millennials made the cover of Time as a generation, pinned the me generation. It's all about me. What can you do for me, and how will you do it, and can you do it soon, please? All right, does that sound familiar? Who likes stuff right now?
Who likes what?
Stuff. Things.
That is fake.
So is life, yet here we are living it. All right? So with millennials, we have this reputation of being lazy or narcissists. How many of you love your selfies? If you've enrolled in my class, you get extra credit for every selfie you post in Canvas.
Yeah.
Some of you are thinking, I could take this guy just for the selfies. You probably could. You probably could. All right? How many of you love your selfies? You love yourself, right? So if you're taking it personal, there's a self-perception, putting your information out there, have a little fun with that. I think this is great. Instead of using this as a negative trait, I like to pull that in so students will feel comfortable using the technology that they're accustomed to and also being rewarded with it through the points. So it makes that grade a more positive connection versus you must do this for your A or you fail in life. Okay, a lot of pressure. All right, right now, and video games. How many of you millennials, like hands, can't even ask the question, hands are going up. You love the video game. So it falls into alignment with what the research suggests, and that is technology, entertainment. Now we're finding new networking issues, video gaming. Anybody play one of those network games where you have like a PS4, okay, and you do the chat rooms, high speed? Let me ask you this. What happens when the internet goes down? Heads rise. What? Internet down. Wi-Fi connection down. What's going on? Now you get angry. You get pissed. I am not a gamer. One of my dear friends is a millennial, and he's a gamer, and he wanted this game. And since I was clueless to this is a generational gap here a little bit, I went to Best Buy to order this game, and I asked the sales associate very nicely. I said, I'm here to order a copy of Black Ops. Oh. And the young man goes, what are you talking about? I said, my friend's a gamer. It's this military game. There's a lot of shooting, a lot of violence, a lot of anger. It makes him happy. It's called Black Ops. And the guy goes, dude, I think it's Black Cops. I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure it's about Black Operations, so let's get that one. And he goes, all right, man. So what he did is he took the video game, and he put his hand over the scene. He goes, here it is, Black Ops. And I bought it. But because I didn't know any better, I was convinced the title, and I'm asking everybody in town, where's this game Black Ops? I did get a lot of friends that season. It was 2 years ago too. All right. And so video games, it's an item that brings people together as a discussion point. It's also utilizing technology and socialization. So one of the things that we discovered as researchers with millennials is the social networking is important, but it's now online. It's a literal online social networking. So how many of you Instagram daily, Facebook daily, or Snapchat daily, or anything else? Okay. When you wake up, is there anybody in here, the first thing you do is check your social media account? No. No? Second thing? Second. All right, second, okay, priorities. First thing I do is hit the snooze button, okay? After the snooze button, do we check out that social media? You want to come in? We have space over here. You come in, don't be shy. All right, and so for the millennials, we've also discovered is there's no rush to have a career. If you go back in time 20, 30 years, it was in high school, what you're going to do, what's your career, what's your goal, get on it. And if you didn't graduate with a plan, you're already behind in life. With millennials, we're seeing students are coming back after a year or two off, traveling, hanging out with family, just figuring out what they like, what they do, or just sleeping in every day for 2 years till someone says, you better go to school, right? There's no rush, there's that drive is not there. And then we value pleasure over money as millennials. As far as being surveyed and researched, this was the #1 response. You'd rather have fun doing something and enjoy it than be stressed out over getting a bunch of money to do it. Does that sound fair? You're like on the edge there. What year were you born?
1998.
Not you.
Oh.
You're just sitting there calm, like waiting for your paycheck. It's good. What year were you born?
97.
97, interesting. So you're just outside that millennial group, right? Right there on the cusp? Oh, no.
No,
No, you are there.
I am.
You're just sitting there like, I don't know about this whole pleasure thing. You like pleasure, right?
I do.
Something like this. Go on about pleasure.
I like money.
You like money. I'm not saying you don't like money, but if you had to choose, do I want a pleasurable experience or do I want to focus on getting the money? Which one are you going to go with?
Money.
Money, okay. How many of you go over the pleasure? So there's more hands up. So again, it's not 100% truism, but it is the overall sort of drive. What is the conversation I struck over here? What's going on? You don't have to hate it. It's just the way it is, right? We'll get you money. All right, so you approach the world in a different mindset than previous generations. And so that's the point of this research. And again, not every millennial answers everything 100% because you all are individuals and very unique, which is quite important. So moving along. If you are in a speech class, there's a good chance you've seen this. If you were in my intro classes, you definitely saw this. I just copied and pasted the slide. This is the elaboration likelihood model. This is one of the persuasion models to help understand how we can influence persuasiveness in individuals, whether it's for marketing, for public speaking, or for whatever you want to do. Now, again, I say influence or change versus coerce or force. Two different ways of persuasive styles. Now, technically, someone could come up and put a gun to your face and say, you must do this, and more than likely, all of us will be like, okay, I want to live, I'll do that. Persuasiveness involves getting somebody's trust, giving them information, and then asking them or suggesting that they do something and getting that result to return. So this model was developed in the late 70s, so it's nothing new, but the concept works. And it deals with the way we process thoughts in our brains. No matter when you were born, you all have this ability to process thoughts, different speeds, different levels, and different levels of depth. So that's really important to understand that. And so this model was used for understanding how we process stimuli, things that are around us. Anybody a fan of, let's say, sports? Any Dodgers fans in here?
No.
Yeah, tough loss. Any Giants fans? /Astro fans, right? Okay. If you ever go to a sporting event, baseball, Super Bowl, basketball game, what's around you? People, lots of people. But if we look up, what's above the people? So lights, scoreboards. What's next to the scoreboard? Usually left or right, or there's a ticker. Advertisements. There it is. Can you think of an event that you went to recently that had a lot of people and no advertising? Is it college? Look around. There's advertising everywhere in college. Maybe not in this room because they just cleaned it up. But like the student center, you walk through there. There's little posters, small things. They'll say approved by the associated students, right? Advertisement. People trying to get stuff. Yes.
Does CDs count?
Who?
CDs.
Well, it depends on what the message is. If there's a little tagline on the bottom, like buy my product, yeah, it's advertisement.
Well, it just said the person is seeing. I did not see any other advertising on it. So.
Okay.
Probably not.
Well, again, it's not 100% everywhere there's going to be advertising, but for the most part, we see advertisements when we drive. Anyone driving the freeway, drive, ride, or BART, public transportation, now we start to see advertisements everywhere we go. And so how are those ads presented? Some of them are scare tactics. Some of them are hilarious. Super Bowl commercials, I love showing Super Bowl commercials because you see a lot of bad things happen to funny people, and then we laugh.
They're mostly stereotypical, being stereotyped.
Stereotypes, definitely.
Yeah, very stereotypical, very common.
Absolutely. And so when you think about that, with all the stuff around us, like right now we are in a pretty neutral room. There's not really anything that's saying, buy Coca-Cola, buy tickets to this. So we don't have that distraction or that clutter. But if you go into a situation where you see a lot of advertisement, usually public events, games, public transportation, how do you process information and say, that's important, that's junk, I'm not going to look at that? How do you do that? We just do it. We don't put a lot of thought into it, we just do it. And so it deals with this process of information, central route versus the peripheral. Peripheral is all the stuff going on in the background. Most of the peripheral stuff we just ignore. But then something catches our attention, we we hone in on it, like, well, I want to know more about this. What is this about? All right, let's see. During the 2016 elections, there was a lot of stuff out there. We had this concept of fake news. Remember that? Okay. How did you process that information? What did you do? Did you take everything online for truth? Didn't watch Fox, okay. Some people say didn't watch CNN. So you got to take and balance it out. Political party-based news, the Clinton News Network versus Fox, the anti-American network, based on your political party. So you have to understand the source of the information to put trust and credibility into it. If you are a Republican, you're probably not going to be going to CNN for your news every day. If you are a Democrat, you're probably going to hate everything that Fox puts out there. Does that mean that either one of those news sources are bad?
No.
Not necessarily. The journalism itself is horrible if you actually read the stories. But it doesn't mean that they're bad people, it just means that they have a political influence on the news reporting. So you have to be aware of that information. The processing of the brain will say, if I generally stick towards Republican views, I will be more likely to gravitate towards Fox News. Make sense? If I generally vote Democrat, I will lean towards CNN or other similar sources. It's the brain processing that to help you filter that stuff out. 2016 threw most of us for a loop because we had this concept of Russian meddling, or these stories that just didn't make any sense. And so one of the examples that I use in my classes would be how simple anybody could manipulate the news. And so ABC is a pretty good site. I'm going to write this up here, abcnews.go.com. So this is how it is in one manner. And so I read this story that said Hillary Clinton was a child molester and she was about to be convicted. And I was like, well, that's new. I haven't heard that. And I looked at the link and it said abcnews.go.com. And I clicked on it and I'm like, okay, that looks like a legitimate source. And I kept looking at the page, had the ABC logo, had the, I think it's 7 News, is what it is here, had that 7 circle, and then had this whole story about Hillary Clinton being this horrible person touching children. And then I kept reading it, and the English did not make sense. Like, it was grammatically incorrect, the punctuation was off, and I'm like, this can't be real. I looked closer, and I went to Google ABC News, and the official site was this. Okay? They look very similar. There's only one difference. Who sees the difference?
The dot.
The dot right here. So that one little dot made it look like a legitimate source. They copied the logo, they copied the navigation bar, and all the other links worked, but they had this bogus article about Hillary Clinton. And I assume there was some stuff done for Trump, but I didn't see anything. The problem that happened with millennials and people in general during 2016 is we saw these quote-unquote reputable news sources and we shared them on social media. Social media is usually a connection of people we like and trust, or people that we want to like and want to trust. And so what happened was, people were taking these sites and just clicking on share. Oh my gosh, horrible story. Let me share this with others to share the information. And that is how fake news spread. How do we fix that? That's a question if you have the answer to, you're probably going to be a billionaire. All right, we're working on that right now. There's no 100% guarantee that we can prevent this from happening, but it is something important that you should consider when you do your news searches. And since millennials are primarily focused on technology, access to quick information, the central and peripheral processing is a key element to success when you have to process that information. All right? And then attitude change, that's really what we're doing for persuasive speaking, attitude and behavioral changes. And then also, we are blending cognitive psychology and persuasive communication. That's really what it is. All right, anybody take a psych class? All right, understand the brain, the processes. My undergrad was in psychology, so for me, it was a no-brainer to take elaboration likelihood model and do communications and psychology. All right. And then the emphasis for most of us is on motivation. If there's nothing in it for us to do it, then why are we going to do it? For me, I like to present this information because I spent 2 years of my life just researching how the world works. And so I want to share that information so it doesn't sit on a library shelf in USC. Okay, so here's a general view of how the information process works. It is based on motivation and ability, how we then process it, and then we move on to the factors that will help influence or promote that attitude or behavioral change. And so if you looked at persuasive speaking or persuasive messaging, so those of you in debate, this is going to be critical for you on getting the information where you want it to go, so we focus on the central process of it versus something on the background or the side. All right, so perfect example, if I am a Republican and I see something pop up about Hillary, I see it on Fox News, to me, yes, it's relevant, I'm going to focus in on what they're saying, and then I'm going to give it some quality. I might actually respond to that news article. If I'm a Democrat and I see it's on Fox News, that is not relevant to me. I'm going to put it on the side. I'll maybe glance at the title, and then I'm done with it. It's just a bunch of junk that's building up over here. Okay. And so that doesn't mean that every single thing you come across, you cognitively sit there and process. It's a natural thing that already happens. And so what our job is to do as researchers and those who market is to figure out how we can get more things up here where it's relevant to you than not relevant. And that gives you the ability to respond to the message that's being created. And that will work in marketing, it'll work in persuasive messaging, it'll work in debate, it'll work in any other class where you're trying to influence change or behavior, okay? And so motivation, what's your motivation? How many of you are motivated only by money? That's your opportunity. You have one hand to raise. Good. Thank you. Don't forget to sign. Well, the second motivation. Who's motivated by the grade? Okay. A couple of you. How many of you are here just to learn? That's your primary goal to come to college, is to learn. So it's not 100% of the hands up. I would say more of us are here for the grades. Because what's at stake here? If you get a poor grade, you don't move on. If you don't move on, what do?
Take it over.
Take it over. So you waste money, you waste time, you can't get that stuff back. All right, so the motivation is always going to be what's in it for you. So in many ways, we can't blame the millennials for having that me, me, me attitude. We live in a very different world than how it was 40, 50 years ago. All right, so here's what happened. Millennials are good at ignoring the noise. That was published in 2011, ignoring the noise. So as a group, that's a really good thing to have. And why do you think that's the case? Well, first of all, what is noise?
Chatter.
Anything in the background. Baby crying. For example, thank you. That was timed. Baby crying, laugh in the back, side conversations during a lecture, somebody who's tapping their foot. If you're feeling ill, if you're hungry, if you're sad, if you just got dumped, all that stuff becomes noise. It prevents you from focusing in on a message. All right? So millennials are really good at just zoning that stuff out. That's what the research showed. That's pretty exciting because if you have a lot of noise that gets buffered out right away, how do we get over that so I get my message to you as a millennial? That's a challenge. Okay? Deals, values, times, and challenges. So for my research, I did a couple of things. I did observational studies where I just sat, not in the bushes, but I watched people and assumed they were millennials. I saw how they spent money. I saw how they went to car dealerships and looked at cars. And then I compared them to older Americans and shoppers, consumers I should say, to see how they responded differently to the salesperson. And so what I found in my observational studies for car purchases, that millennials went into a dealership and they went in there to either test drive or actually feel or touch the vehicle. The salesperson was completely useless to them because they had all the information on their cell phones. They had websites pulled up. They had notes in their little note applications, and they had specific questions. And if the salesperson couldn't answer that question within the first 20 seconds, they moved on to somebody else or left the dealership. How many of you can relate to that situation? Yeah, I see a lot of head nodding, okay? Because you're very independent, you have access to information, and you use that. And so a lot of people who are not in the millennial group refuse to acknowledge that or don't realize that that's what's going on. So by casting these negative names towards millennials, it's not a fair representation of the group at large. Okay. In 2005, there was arguments posed that millennials focus more on brand names by word of mouth through social media than they did on standard advertisements. So for marketers, this was a challenge. If marketers are spending $4.5 billion each year to get their campaigns, to get all of you to spend some of that $200 billion you have access to, and you're ignoring that, that's a waste of their money and their clients' money. So how do they get around that? Many of you on social media, anybody use Facebook? Okay. Yeah, not a lot of hands up there. It's okay, it's okay. I have a Facebook account and I'm in therapy for it. Let me ask you this question. Anybody use MySpace? No. She's like, I did. I moved on. So MySpace was one of the pioneers in social networking, but now if we mention it, your brand, oh God, there's the MySpace guy. We don't want that. But MySpace, if it didn't happen, we wouldn't have Facebook, right? These sort of happen in events to help get things moving forward. So you gotta take all that into consideration. What's the big thing that you use? Instagram? Snapchat? Instagram.
Facebook Messenger.
Oh, Facebook Messenger, you're on Facebook.
Oh, Twitter is used a lot. I don't have
Twitter. If you want to find my handle, it's @TheRealDonaldTrump. Just find me on there. All right, so social media is key. And anybody use Gmail? Google Mail? A lot of us use Google Mail. Google is very good at understanding millennial behaviors. If you do a Google search for pretty much anything, and those of you who have taken me in class, you realize I created my own specific educator account because when I would go home at night, I would log in to check my Gmail and have the most random things pop up as things that I might be interested in because of all the searches that happen throughout the day when I log into school computers. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I was put on the FBI list. Because Google and Facebook and other social media applications are really good at tracking your behavior. Everything from where you go to what you look at, how long you look at it, and what you click on. Great example, I was looking for a very specific theater light called DMX lighting. I typed in DMX lighting, I got a bunch of results, most of them on the top were advertisements, didn't find what I wanted. And then I went back the next day and everything on Facebook, yeah, I use Facebook. Everything on Facebook was, here's this new DMX lighting, even in my news feed, all this stuff pops up. How many of you have similar experiences to that? Whatever the product is, right? So you are being watched. Make no doubt about that. This is not a conspiracy theory, though. It's just a fact. You're being watched. Sometimes you can use, silent mode or invisible mode on Chrome, and it does an okay job, but Chrome is what, Google? So Google is secretly tracking you, and then later on, like, oh yeah, well here's all this stuff we knew you did. And it comes back to you. But it's not as aggressive if you don't use that invisible mode. So just keep that in mind. All right? But the key thing here is that social media is the way that most millennials share information, and that's where you develop your trust. If you look at the negative aspect of that, if you address cyberbullying, where are all the problems happening? When people turn on each other, those friendships go downhill, they become negative, and you have young women, I'm going to pick on women here, men you're next, but you have young women who call each other names, they create fake accounts, and then they use derogatory terms to insult, harass, and ultimately push their former friends into negative spaces. Okay? Great example, not a great example, but a good example to highlight this is the young woman who convinced her boyfriend to kill himself over text messaging. So that's a very unique millennial trait, and it's the more the negative side of things. But again, that was a persuasive action for that individual to tell her boyfriend, oh, you're a loser, you're never going to be anything, the best thing you should do is kill yourself. And so how do you get to somebody through a text? I mean, that's very powerful to change somebody's opinion without having that interpersonal reaction. And so it's also very concerning as we see times have changed. All right? So let's look at this. This is great. Read the syllabus you must. Any Star Wars fans in here? All right, somebody said this to me and I thought it was amazing. How many of you here get a syllabus and just ignore it? You're all my students. No wonder why you're here for extra credit. That makes sense. That hurts. You got me deep shred. Okay, so what you can see here is we have a group. Are you millennials? So you have a group of individuals who choose not to read this, and it's frustrating to instructors. So how do instructors get around this? What do? Post it on Canvas.
Extra
Okay.
credit.
Extra credit to
Or they
make
do
points.
tests. You get tests on this.
They give you a
Yes,
on the
quiz it.
syllabus,
So
just
now-
make sure you know it.
So what are we doing? We're trying to get a motivational connection. You're not reading the syllabus, fine. There's 10 points available. You either pass or you don't. What does that quiz make you do? It makes you ask somebody who did read the quiz. Take the quiz and then get it done. Because it's like dragging your feet pulling teeth there. So this is one of the challenges for instructors, and trust me, we're aware. So different methods to getting you to do stuff. Emotional appeals. I try to include humor to make things funny and interesting. I do a lot of night classes and long blocks, so it's like 3 hours. It's a lot of time with one person. And it's like a dating game. Like you have 3 hours. Okay, we're good. So enough of you for now. But we are committed to this, so you can't just walk away because most of you are invested to get that A. All right. And then I talked about the observational studies, and then I did analysis between the different generations. All right, so that was sort of what the study was. The study was quite fascinating. I used videos. I played videos for a group of individuals who were millennials, and I had it in a focus group setting. Anybody been part of a focus group? Interesting, right? Where you sit there and you ask questions, people watch you, they film you. Did they film you? Was there a mirror there?
I don't think so.
Okay, you're lucky. Because usually there's somebody recording to take down the information because focus groups are expensive, but what they do is give a lot of valuable information to help make decisions or move things forward. So for my focus group, what I did, I used images and videos and surveys, and I pulled them all together. So I tapped into 2 different resources. Anybody work for or have Kaiser as an insurance, Kaiser Permanente? Wonderful. Who works for Kaiser? Okay, good. So you don't work at the call center, do you? No. So what I did was, at the time, I interviewed nurses who worked at the call center. The average age for the nurse at that time was like 58. So they were young, old, or Americans. And I interviewed them, had them do surveys, respond to visuals, and got a whole bunch of data back. Then I met with younger Americans. Let's see, anybody work for Starbucks? Okay, I did 8 years time there. Anybody go to Starbucks? So what kind of employees do you see? Usually younger, more trendy?
Yeah.
Okay. And so I did, I compared the groups. For the focal groups, it was quite fascinating because I would show videos that would have some emotional responses built into them, and then survey the millennials to see the responses and reactions. And so I compared the two. Here's what we did. So this is one image that was used for the older Americans group, if you will. And this is an ad for United Airlines. And so what images or what emotions are trying to be generated from this image? What do you think?
Success.
Patriotism, success, pride. What are some visual cues that tell us that? The Olympic symbols, USA, we see the swimmer. Okay, can you tell the ethnic minority background of this individual? Is it a white guy? Yeah, probably not. It's sort of not clear. And that's strategic, okay? Because what United is trying to do is say, we are American, not airlines, but United, and we want you to support our product because we include everybody. So that was strategically placed in there. And then I showed this to different groups and asked how they responded. Was it favorably, was it neutral, or was it negative? And how many respond favorably to this? Okay. Who responds negatively? And who responds in a neutral manner? All right, perfect. That echoed the results that we did 4 years ago. And the results were that this ad really had no influence on changing behavior. So this didn't say, you know what, I usually fly Southwest, I'm gonna fly United now because they support the Olympics. Didn't happen, okay? Then we did electronic surveys, and then we added video to it. So if there was more of a human component, meaning United had a flight attendant or a customer service rep working with a customer, millennials were more often willing to change their preferred airline to United and pay a little bit more because of that interaction. Baby boomers were like, no, whatever's cheaper I'm going with. Two different ways to look at the same thing. And so that was helpful. All right, and so when testing the results, I partnered with a bunch of local Starbucks stores, worked with their store managers, and to motivate the millennials to come in, I had managers give them, this was like vacation time. They got extra breaks at work, so it wasn't directly paid, but they got a little easier time away from their hard work as a barista. The second thing Starbucks did was they donated gift cards, merchandise, coffee, and pastries, and the food was the biggest motivator for both groups. Free food, free coffee. Millennials showed up, and then baby boomers showed up, and we did it separately. All right. So Starbucks was great for that. We had 3 different focus groups. We covered people across a 30-mile radius, so we had some differences as far as demographics go. So it was a pretty diverse group of individuals. And we had these social parties. So they were told they were being asked some research questions. It was a focus group. It was sold as a party. Who doesn't want to go to a party? It's a coffee party. And so we had a lot of conversation, watched a lot of videos, got some honest feedback. It was able to generate results that compares to everything that we're doing here. So here's what we found. Happy, sad, angry. These are the top 3 emotions that helped influence decision making with advertisements for millennials. How many of you like to be happy? How many of you like when somebody else is sad? Wow, there's 3 hands up. Okay. Happy people stay away. How many of you get angry and make angry decisions? Yeah. Okay, so angry in advertisement, that's a little creative. But happy and sad is pretty easy. My favorite sad advertisement is the Sarah McLachlan song. Yeah. Right there, emotional response. Good job, everybody. There it is.
With the dogs?
With the little dog, a little eye falling out of their head. You hear it, and then you see like the voice, you hear the voice, it's like, for just less than a cup of coffee a day, Fifi can get their eye stuff back in, you can help. Right? And so television time is expensive. So somebody's paying for this money, right? Somebody's donating. Are you donating?
Hell no.
This is always the response. I feel for this commercial, but I'm not giving them anything. But somebody is. And so the research suggests it's the baby boomers who are pouring their hearts and their money out. Millennials are compassionate towards that, but you're not getting a dime from me. True story. So here's what I found out. Of the nearly 60 participants, more of them are female. Very diverse group. And the annual income ranged from $12,000 a year to over $100,000. Realistically, this was the baby boomers and this was millennial. Just if you look at the statistics. Not everybody made that, okay? And so let's talk about the limitations. So to make this research apply more and further, there'd be a larger population size. We would repeat the study. And this is what one of those memes. Anybody watch this show?
Yes. Big Bang Theory.
All right, good job. I often forget other people have limitations. It's so sad. I think that's absolutely fantastic when it comes to dealing with millennials. All right. And so some other things, what I've done to further this research is this semester I added negative grading. So if you miss any of my assignments for whatever reason, you are awarded a -1. Horrible person, I know, I get it. But what does that -1 motivate you to do?
Do the homework.
Not miss an assignment. And if you turn it in late, what does that -1 turn into? A 0. So you're not penalized for it. So it's utilizing negative motivation, which is a very common term in psychology, to apply it to a communication studies course. For the most part, when asked a couple of students, a spot check for accuracy, the negative point system was influential in helping them get the assignments done. If they missed it, definitely made them go back and repeat it. For about a third of the students that I've already surveyed, and if you're taking my class, the survey is coming in 2 weeks. There's a third of individuals who said, I absolutely hated it and it had no impact, it just made me hate you more. Okay. Of those 3 different groups, who do you think had the most success in the class? Those who hated me more for the negative points, or those who never wanted to get the negative?
Who did not want to get.
Those who didn't want to get the negative. So there's always that third that you can't reach out to, but you can still try. And in that last third, who were sort of angry about it, we can go back to the emotion slide, the anger. Those students are now turning that work in so they don't have the penalty. So it's a negative reinforcement. This has been piloted this semester at 7 different schools, and it's had mixed reviews, generally positive, which was surprising to me. And I'll be presenting that research in February, March next year. Okay. All right, so the goal was 100% submission. So many times we take a class, we just don't understand the workload. Anybody fall into that? All right, sometimes you take a speech class, oh, it shouldn't be that bad, I just do 4 speeches, I'm good. But then you take the class, you realize there's a lot of work behind it, and then you may not plan ahead or whatever the case is. Life happens, I get it. So I try to match that motivation of your goal for the A to getting the job done. So I have my stuff done, you have your stuff done, we meet in the middle. And so I use a lot of this research to get to that point. So surveys are always great. Anybody been asked to participate in a survey? Really important. I try to do it all the time. I go to Disneyland a lot and I go to Vegas a lot, so I get the most random surveys. Right? Do you like alcohol? Maybe. Do you like Disneyland? Yes. Do you like them together? Yes. Okay. Now we have some more motivation. Great. And then what I do is I always look back at the 2012 data. And so that's going to be 6 years old soon. And we're seeing how millennials are changing and progressing. But so far, these traits have maintained, which is money is a focus, pleasure, happiness, social connectivity, and technology. All of these traits don't seem to be dying or going away anytime soon. And that's fascinating because that is one consistency that we haven't seen with this group yet. Okay, so we are just at our time for questions. What do you have for me? Nothing wonderful.
Can we still turn in our negative assignments?
That's the takeaway. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Up until tonight.
Do they know going in that the negative grading is going to turn to a 0?
Guess where it's at?
In the syllabus.
That's right. Who read that?
We
No
had
one.
a quiz.
They had a quiz on it. And it's also in the quiz question. What else? The research into the processes.
Alright, so you were talking about like social media and that's having that main path and the periphery path, right?
Okay.
So
Central versus
central
peripheral?
versus periphery, right? So a lot of social media that takes advantage of that central periphery, like Facebook or Facebook is the one I think of is really profitable. And
Yeah.
then Snapchat, which is not profitable at all right now, but yet they take up a lot of millennials' time.
So that is a great question. So those of you that use Snapchat, anybody use Pandora for music? If you look, and even the Apple section, if you look and see the terms of agreement, in some cases you will click a button that allows them to track everything you do. So even though they're not selling you ads in your face, what they're doing is they're studying every place you go, how long you go there, and then we know the locations for malls and stores and other items. And also, if you log in and do online shopping from your phone, they're tracking that data. Pandora's the worst. It's like 4 pages of all the stuff that they track me. I don't even use Pandora because they're so invasive in the privacy. So excellent question. It is good to know. Yes.
So going on that, how many people actually did know that they're getting targeted by ads and that they have the option to turn it off?
How many people know? I don't know that's outside of my scope.
Oh, okay.
I don't do all that technology selling or sales shit. But if you do use those products, ask the company, go to the fact page and double check. It's what you can do to protect yourself.
What's the best way to get a millennium to do something?
Millennium? Like the Falcon?
Whatever. To get them engage them besides money, or I mean.
Motivational factor. I think
Alcohol.
millennials are now able to drink, right? So when I did this research, most of the millennials were not able to drink, so we didn't want to do that. No breaking the laws. But the best way to motivate a millennial is to treat them as an individual, to talk to them and see what their interests are, and then match with that. That's really what it comes down to. You agree, millennials? Are you people? All right. Do you have feelings?
Yeah.
Exactly. Do you want to be acknowledged as equals with other generations?
I think so, yes.
Yes. Yeah, the answer is yes. And so that's what's been missed between the different generational gaps. How many of you have felt pressured or stressed because someone has lectured you where you should do something a certain way? All right. That's part of that respect issue in the separation between those generational gaps. And the research showed that every single time in both surveys with the baby boomers and the millennials. Great question. All right. Anything else?
What was the beginning date for the millennials' birthday?
It's 1986. It depends on who you go for the research. There are 4 dates. The earliest millennial research they say is like 1979, 1980, but that's really a stretch. It's usually later in the 80s, like 90s.
Okay.
Why is that considered a millennial? The 19...
Because it has to when the millennials turned 18 in 2000, right? Because 2000 was that marker that year. So when the millennials become adults, that's really what we're targeting.
Oh, so you're referring to when a person becomes...
I didn't give these titles out. These are already established. I just looked in one
so
area.
then that's what they mean. So they refer to when you at least become an adult.
Yeah.
At the turn of... Okay.
Okay. I think we have one more question. Are we good on time?
We have like 5 more.
We have 2 more questions.
Someone has a question over there.
I think it's this slide we're looking at. So the millennials started, 1980 to 2000. That's sort of like the average that I use. Let me go. Question, yes.
Why do you think millennials are so demonized by the other generation?
Why are millennials demonized by other generations?
Because they think we got it easy.
That is one response from baby boomers. That was like the second response. Another,
We're so entitled.
the entitlement issue. Another reason, just if I can keep your attention for 2 more minutes, another reason why millennials have been sort of treated poorly is the social expectations have changed. Like if you look at what happened legally as far as laws go, if you look right now for like sexual harassment issues going on, there are certain things that were okay once in society that are no longer okay. For example, spanking children, participation awards. These are all the things that have sort of put a grudge on the other generations looking at millennials. And all this stuff was free-form responses in most of the baby boomers.
So aren't all of the generations demonized by the ones before them?
Yes, in some aspects. But doesn't mean that they're horrible people. You have a question? No? Anyone else? So did you enjoy this information?
Yes.
Okay, do we get the millennial song? How many, let me ask you this. How many of you recognize the original version of the song that I played earlier, the millennial? What was the song?
Oh, I don't know.
Obadi, right? Who was it by? The Beatles. One of the reasons I realized I was getting older, I asked the question, who is John Lennon? In one of my classes, nobody knew. I was like,
Oh my God.
hard to stop. Generational gap.
I'm sorry, was that a rhetorical question? I thought you were literally asking.
You know, good. Okay, good.
Yes, my father really likes the Beatles pretty well. I remember.
And so the person who made that video was probably a Generation X, born in the 60s and 79, and that's part of that grudge and the stereotype we pulled into it. So we made that clever little video about how horrible millennials are.
I want to send that to my kids.
It's great, it's great. Okay, so I think if there's no more questions, there's 2 sign-in sheets, one for Ohlone, one for Las Positas. Where's the Las Positas one? Make sure if you're from Las Positas, you find Abdul, you sign that and get that back to me. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. your Ohlone, find the Ohlone sign-in sheet. Please write your name and your instructor on it so that I can forward it to them. Thank you